Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I'm very excited to have with me Oscar Vasquez. And let me tell you about Oscar. He is the founder of EstateDocPrep.com. Oscar is an expert in estate planning who helps families and homeowners protect their assets from the high cost of probate, from creating living trust to avoiding costly estate planning mistakes. Oscar's insights could save you thousands and provide peace of mind. Oscar's insights also, if you're a homeowner, he says you really can't afford to miss this conversation because these insights are going to be so helpful for you. So we're going to just dive right in and talk about the will versus the living trust. Which one do you really need? Please join me in welcoming my guest, Oscar Vasquez. Oscar.
Vicki, thank you very much for having me and participating in my crusade to bringing awareness to to estate planning, because 68% of homeowners in America don't have an estate plan, and that means they're gonna go to probate. And I think it's because they don't know. So thank you very much for allowing me to be on here. Now,
Yeah. I always start with two easy questions, though, before we get into the heart of all this. And the first is just to tell everybody, where do you live? Where do you call home?
Oh, yeah. Well, I call home in the city of Fillmore, California. We're a little small farm town. Well, we used to be a farm town. Now we're more of a nursery town. But we just north of Los Angeles, about 45 minutes. We use Magic Mountain as an icon. Everybody in California knows, or in the world, Magic Mountain in California, which down in north of Los Angeles.
Awesome. And the second question is, I told about, what you do today, but I really love for you to talk about your journey. What really informed or impacted you that drove you to this purpose and this passion to get that word out, as you mentioned before? So please share about that journey and maybe some of the challenges that you had to overcome, and how you came out on this side.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, my journey started about 28 years ago in the real estate. I started off as a real estate agent and then became a broker, started to have a firm. And as the longer we got into the business, we started to notice that some of our customers or clients would pass and they would go to probate, and their kids would come and say, "Hey, mom and dad, or mom died and dad died, but now the attorney wants $50,000, or he says we have to sell the house to pay him. What do we do?" And so we started to educate our clients, and then the longer we got into it, probably about 5-6 years ago, we started to notice that attorneys were taking longer to deliver a case or an estate plan, and their fees went from $600 to $5,000. And so once that happened, I had my epiphany, or my aha moment, when I sat down and the attorney said, "Well, Oscar, it's not complicated. An estate plan is really simple. It's really simple. It's a contract and they call it a contract between the parents or the trustee and their kids. And the contract is basically the instructions on what they want their kids to do
Mhm.
with the things that they live behind. And I said, "What do you mean things?" He says, "Everything they can't take with them."
That's everything.
Yeah. So so we got into that, and then he said, and it's called a contract because it has to have legal provisions so the courts enforce it, so that way it avoids court altogether.
Yeah.
And I said, "So it's the same provisions?" He goes, "Yeah, the only thing that is different is the instructions. Is one, it has to have all the legal provisions, and then two, it has to have those provisions to prevent you from going to court." And I said, "Well, what is that?" And he goes, "It's about 100 and some pages because you got to cover everything to prevent it from going to court. And that way it'll be enforceable." And that was when I had the aha moment. And we came up with a software company called Estate Doc Prep that we made the software. Now we made estate planning affordable for the masses and easy to complete and get it done in as little as 45 minutes if you wanted to, but that's not including the human element of
Mhm.
things that you never thought that you need to really, or that you didn't know that really happened when you pass, and that you want to go like, what do I say to that, right? So, and
Yeah.
I call that the human element of delay that goes into that aspect of the estate planning. And
Wow.
that's how we got there.
Excellent. Yeah, and it's really so important if anyone out there has had someone that's passed and they didn't have an estate plan, they didn't have a living will, they didn't have anything. And it's so sad to see the state just take everything and the kids get nothing and it wasn't really what the parents would have wanted. And you don't think about it, and for us, we did our wills and everything before we had kids. Now we have kids. Now we have grandkids. So, I'm looking to do all that all again. My husband and I are up there in age now in 60s and 70s. And so, I think people don't think about that. Oh, it's done. I couldn't even tell you probably where my will is or who the attorney was that originally did it, type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that we always tell people, and that's one of the benefits. And we always say, listen, you should review your estate plan or your wills and your estate plan. It all depends on what estate documents you want to have, and I'll go deeper into that. But you should review them every 2 to 3 years, not to get them on a continuous update, but to know where they are, because a lot of people when they get sick, they're like, "Man, where did I leave that?" Right?
I know.
And where did it go? So it's funny that you say that, because a lot of people don't. So one, every 3 years you should review it. But so when it goes into that, in the purpose of that is because you don't want to disinherit somebody by accident,
Yeah.
or you don't want to go to probate by accident because it didn't. And that's why it's called a living trust, because it's a living document while you're alive. And that's called, the legal term is a revocable living trust, and it becomes irrevocable, which means non changeable, non edited when you
You
pass.
pass.
Yeah. So
Can
that's,
you
and
talk a little bit, educate them a little bit about probate? Maybe they don't know what
oh,
probate is, and I think that is a definition everybody should understand.
yeah. So I always tell people this: Google what is the threshold in my state to avoid, to go to probate. And I always tell people, go Google that. And when you do that, if you have an excess of assets that exceed that dollar amount, you're going to go through this process that we call probate. And the reason why probate got started was because the government wanted to protect us and protect our assets from the wrong people getting our assets. Okay, so one, that we do that. So I'm going to explain the actual. I'm going to give you a lifeline of the entire process, and it's like a
Perfect.
45-minute talk, and I'll give it to you in 5 minutes or within 2 minutes. So what happens is when you pass, if you meet the threshold, an attorney, you would have to seek an attorney, and the conversation usually goes like this in California. It says, hey, you don't have it, you got to go to probate to get title to mom's house, which is your house now, but you got to get title so you can sell it, refinance it, or live in it legally. And the cost is about $50,000. If you don't have it, don't worry. You can pay me when you sell the house, right? In California, it starts at about 26, but the average cost in California to go to probate is $50,000. That's the first. That's the
Mm,
first bucket of cold water that your child gets. Like, wow, what do you mean? How do I get that? That's the first. The
mhm,
second thing is once it goes to court, they have to publish it. It becomes public information that Oscar had this, Vicki had this amount of money. If you feel you should be and you should inherit it, or you're a beneficiary, come forward, come to court. If he or she owes you money, come forward so we can make sure you get paid. And then it becomes public. The second thing that happens is once it goes to public, the judge makes the final decision on what happens to your assets. Now,
mhm.
I've never heard of anybody in probate, or at least any of my clients. I mean, we try to get 100% of our clients. We're probably at a 85 to 90% of our clients in real estate that have a living trust, because we educate them, and we're on them consistently to have a living trust to avoid probate. But if you go to probate, I've never heard of a judge saying, you're a good kid, we give you money, we don't give you money, we don't give it. He usually does it equally across the board, that we've seen. If you go to probate, he doesn't disinherit him. However, if there is the black sheep of the family that doesn't communicate, that doesn't come forward, nobody acknowledges him, or they don't tell him, right, or her, that
Mhm,
mom or dad died, or he just said, I don't care, he gets disinherited because he doesn't show up, right?
mhm,
Nobody acknowledged him. And then what happens is then the judge decides what happens to your things. And then the biggest, I think it's probably the one of the biggest reason and things that happen in probate that most people don't know is that it takes anywhere from 6 to 18 to 24 months to
yeah,
settle the estate. So that
yeah,
means your beneficiaries will have to wait another 2 years, can wait up to 2 years, can wait 2 years to be able to get the things you left for them, right? By going to probate, because the judge wants to make sure that if there's anybody that they forgot, they have time to come forward, right?
yeah.
And so that's the awful part of probate. And there's only one way to prevent that, and that a will not prevent that if you meet the threshold. And that's why I always tell people, Google it, figure it out what it is in your state. I can tell you
Mhm,
California is 184,500, Utah is 100. Indiana is 50,000, and Colorado is 60,000. So that means if you live in Indiana and you have $50,000 in your bank account, your account will be frozen because it has to go to probate.
mhm,
What a great fortune to have, but how much of that's going to go to attorneys, courts, and then delays before your children even get that? Which is even, it's like saying somebody else is going to get a portion of your kid's inheritance because we didn't prepare for it.
yeah.
That's crazy, but it
So
happened.
during that time period, you say 18 to 24 months, what if, and those assets are frozen, so what if the house isn't paid for?
Well, the what they do is they do what's called an if the kids cannot afford it, they do what's called an ex parte, and they force them to sell it, because they say, you know what, if you can afford it, then they get a the judge signs an order that makes the bank take payments while they settle it. One, if they can't afford it, then they do an ex parte to liquidate the home, and now they're forced to sell the family home, and then the money just sits there. They kind of just sign papers, and or the judge, says you sell it, but keep the money in the trust account,
Mm-hmm.
which is a horrible thing. Not only do your kids not end up with the family home anymore, if you're like us, we all grew up together, and that there's
Mm-hmm.
the emotional value is so much more than the monetary value when it comes to stuff
Yeah.
like that, because of all the
Yeah.
memories. I mean, that's the things that we
Mm-hmm.
take with us, right? At least we
Yeah.
think we do.
So we started to talk about the difference between a will and a living trust. And at the beginning, I said I had a living will. So is a living will different than a living trust?
It is, and I'll share with you. A living, and I'll break it down to simplify it. But a will is a two-page document, or a living trust is about 140 pages. Okay, a will says, "I love you. I leave you everything." Right?
Mm-hmm.
And here's what it is. A living trust is specific instructions that tell you what you want to have happen with
Yeah.
it. Like, you can hold it. I mean, we'll go into provisions on some of the creativeness that I deal a lot with educators, engineers, and hire people that realize and know that they're gonna die, right? And I say that
Yeah.
because I think, you talk to homeowners that are in their 30s and 40s, and like, yeah, we're gonna die, but not today. We'll just do it later, right? But
Yeah.
people that are have a little bit more education, or that are a little bit more prepared and acknowledge the fact, they start to prepare for it now. So a will is a two-page document. If you paid an attorney, it's probably 3 to 4 pages, but a living trust is that. A will, if you meet the threshold in your state, will still have to go to court. So I say a will uses to influence the judge on what you want to have happen. It doesn't mean that the judge will make that final decision
Yeah.
based on your wishes. I'll give you an example. We had a client did not want a living trust. He had a family in Texas, moved to California. He had 3 kids in Texas. When he moved to California, he had 4 kids. He wanted to leave everything to his will. Specifically said, "I want everything to I want to give everything to my kids," and he named them off. When they published it, the kids from Texas came to court, and the judge awarded the $3 million equally to all 7. So why he would want to, he didn't disinherit them, he didn't have a living trust, he didn't have a will, but that is how your kids can get disinherited or lose a portion of their inheritance because it wasn't properly structured, or what didn't have the right
Mm-hmm.
documents, right?
Right.
So that's the biggest difference, and that's the biggest misconception of, "I already have my will, we're covered." Okay, you can, but that I always tell people, we have 2 plans. One, we have the government plan where they decide, and two,
Mm-hmm.
where we decide. So you
Yeah.
decide whichever is better.
Yeah. And so maybe people are listening and think, well, I'm not rich. I'm not super wealthy. And so I probably don't need that, right?
Yeah, that's another misconception, because here's one thing that people don't realize. We live in the richest land in the world, I believe, and not only do we have all the luxuries and all the things, but if you look at the threshold, 50 to every home in California is worth more than 184.5. Most of the homes, almost every home, and almost every piece of land that is in Colorado is worth more than 60. I did an estate plan in Indiana, and she said, "Oh, I think my house is probably worth like 80,000." We did a sight unseen appraisal, so that way she could acknowledge what it was. We had someone do a value. It was worth $198,000.
Wow.
And she's like, "Oh my God, I got an offer for 92,000. I almost took it." And I said, "Well, there you go. Now you know, right? It's
Yeah.
about not knowing." So we are wealthy. So one, do I need it? And do I have to be wealthy? If you are a homeowner, you have to have a living trust, not a will, a living trust. And that means that you've met the threshold of going to probate. If you sacrificed and created a nice retirement where you, and I say sacrifice because those of us that save, it takes sacrifice to save. It doesn't just happen,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So we always tell people, meet the if you meet the threshold, you should have it, but there's not all living trusts are created the same. You have to have a comprehensive living trust, so it
Mm.
has everything in there that you need, and I call them for the end of life documents, right?
Mm.
And there's 5 or 6 of them that are really, really important.
So, what complications might there be if, say, the the people who did the will, say your parents, and so um, one lives, or both of them end up needing to go to a nursing home? What happens then?
Well, that's where the a nursing home comes into your living trust. What happens, and then you have, I'll give you a sad story. We had somebody that went into a nursing home, didn't have a savings, but she had a home, and she didn't have a living trust. And when she passed, Medicaid put a lien on their property of almost $300,000 because what happens, and a lot of people that are homeowners don't realize this, that if you don't have what's called assisted living or living planned out, and if you don't have a policy for that, the government will help you for that. But what they don't tell you is that if you own a house during that time, if it's in your
Mm.
name, they're
There.
going to come back and charge you for it when you're gone, right? You won't have to pay
Mhm.
it, but your kids will. And that means, so just if you don't have a assisted living program or something available that to do that, and you own a home, be aware that Medicare will go back and attach a lien to the house, so when it sells, they're going to get paid, and that
Yeah.
means your kids end up paying for it for you because
Yeah.
they lose out on that.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
huge benefit that gets lost.
Yeah. I know whenever I first heard that, I was in my early, just turned 40, I think, and I got long-term care right away because I had an uncle who didn't have any of that stuff, and I had to put him in a nursing home that he could afford, which was horrible. And and it just was the trailer that he lived in originally, just nothing was there. And so it just was an eye-opening thing for me, and I thought, okay, I'm putting money into long-term care.
Yeah, and those are things that I think we really don't start until one. And here's an interesting thing. If you don't feel that a living trust is for you, I always say go ask. Ask people that you love, trust around you, and ask, hey, do you know anybody that's gone to probate and would you recommend it? Right. And everybody that they could say, I want to think about it. I say, go think about it, but go ask people that you know and ask them what happens in probate, and if they know anybody, ask them for their story. They come back and say, "Okay, Oscar, that was a good homework assignment." The people that
Mhm.
do the assignment, they come back and say, "You know what? I
Yeah.
definitely need a living. I definitely need this. I want this for my kids, right?
Mhm.
Because we'll be gone."
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we touched a little bit, but so maybe in a few states, if it's different, what's the typical cost then to set up that living trust? And when you say that you have the app, and we'll talk about that a little bit, is the app a guided completion, or is it
Yeah,
self-serve?
that's a great question. So here's what we found to be able to make it. So one is you have, which is the gold standard, and go get an attorney, and the average cost for an attorney to do it for you where they just call you, they ask you some questions, they plug them in, and they prepare them, and they prepare the legal documents for you. The average cost in the United States right now is about $3,500, varying on states. And I know that in fact, for Indiana, because I was curious on that. In Indiana, it was actually $3,900 was the lowest
Mm-hmm.
cost that we found, and that's the goes. It's done for you. Then the second one that you have is where you get what's called a software company. But there's an interesting statistic. A software company, 95% of the people that start the estate plan don't finish it, because there's a lot of unanswered questions and provisions. Do I want this, and how do I use this, and when does this come to effect? So that was, and that is, that usually, that cost is usually about 795 to about 1,200. So the average is about, I would say, about $900 to get a
Mm-hmm.
comprehensive living trust, which is a complete trust that protects you, and they don't have updates. Now, an attorney, that's called a restatement. And this is what they do: is an attorney would charge you. So, for example, you created it in 2020, and now in 2025 you got additional grandkids, and you want to update it. So now you do an addendum, and now it says you add a provision, and that's called a restatement. And that restatement with an attorney costs anywhere from $1,200 to $1,800. With the software company, they just charge you again, right? Because it's their software. They just, you want to use it
Mm-hmm.
again, you're done, you print it,
That's
you pay
right.
again.
Charge it again, like
Yeah.
again.
With us, with the state doc prep, we are in the middle, and we're in the middle because we don't do it for you, because we're not attorneys. We don't prepare documents. What we do is we get on Zoom and we give you the layman's terms on how these provisions are made. Like, for example, we had a mixed marriage, and the husband had the house. He said, I paid for that house twice, right? One when I first bought it, and the second when I bought my other wife out. So so he says, I want my kids to inherit the house, but I want to give my wife a living estate where she could live here for as long as she's alive, or she could rent it and benefit from the income while she's alive. Once she becomes no longer here, then the house goes to the kids, and that's called the life estate. And that's one box in the software. You just check that, say, hey, what do you want to have happen? This is what I want to have happen.
Mm-hmm.
However, the legal provision is a legal provision, and because we don't write documents, it's there like, how do I use this, right? Or that does that happen? So we jump on Zoom with you. We usually do about 3 to 4 calls before you go to your, we call it a signing ceremony, because it's a big thing. 95% of the people talk about how relieved they were to have an estate plan, and how complex it was to be able to get it done, and how easy. So one,
Mm-hmm.
we work with you. We work with you until you, and we work with you, or we get on Zoom and we educate you through that process. But when we use stories, we don't, because we don't give legal advice. We say this is how it's been used from our other clients, and this is how we
Mm-hmm.
saw it come into effect. And we've had hundreds and hundreds of clients that we've seen that's passed. Not saying that we're bad luck. No, just kidding. But we're all gonna do two things, right? Die and go on taxes. And so
Yeah, that's
our
right.
cost on our website is, on our website we have a retail, we have our cost that we sell for 24.97. But here's the thing: it becomes with unlimited updates. That means the younger you are, the more updates you're going to have, the more value it has to you, the more things that you have. Like, another thing that software companies and attorneys, they charge you for funding letters. So, like, if you have 4 properties, they're going to say, oh, it's $350 or $500 per property to transfer it to the trust so we can prepare it. We give you unlimited funding letters. That means your bank accounts, your assets, your digital. And now we're starting to see a lot of more what's called digital assets. Like, we just did a YouTuber that has like 8 or 9 channels, of, they're called faceless channels, but they're just about concepts. They're just about things that happen in the world, but they're kind of like a news, but it's organic news about history and stuff like that. And he generates income. That's a digital asset. That's going to continue to generate revenue forever. Right? He said his oldest video is 5 years old, and it still generates about $20 to $60 a month. That's 5 years old. I mean, I was like, wow, you produced that, huh? I mean, it was very intriguing to me. But go back to the funding asset. So you have to fund it. So that's another expense that incurs. With our software, you get unlimited funding letters. You can put your RV in, you can put anything of assets that you want into it, because in a trust, you own nothing, but you control everything. And
Yeah.
that means that you decide on what happens to those things. And that was one of the benefits. The second is that we get unlimited restatements. Now, after a year, there is $129 restatement if you want to use it. And the reason for that 129 is because we pay attorneys for every state, because for every state, if there's any laws that get updated, we pay the attorneys to update the software for that state. And it's a 120, and we share that cost. So now it becomes a super affordable when you want unlimited updates, you want unlimited funding letters, you want to inherit, disinherit, or add things, you can do it. And I think after the first or second call with us, you're like, oh man, this is easy. I got this. Right. And then and you kind of get a lot of those things in there. And that's kind of like the biggest difference between the three tiers, I would say. And I would say we're kind of like the tier, you don't do it by yourself, it's a software, but we do it with you, where that gives you, I mean, 95% of the people get them done in like 2 weeks, because we give out a guide. We say, hey, fill out this guide. When you get it in there, then you could start your trust, because all of the human element questions or the human element of delay are there, and answers, and they're in that guide.
Awesome. Well, you shared so many great things, and I'm sure there's people out in the audience that may have more questions. So as always, I will share my slide that has Oscar's contact information. If you are just listening and driving in the car, don't start trying to write this as you're driving. All this will be on my YouTube channel, Vicki Noethling. So please do subscribe if you haven't, as well as my findyourleadershipconfidence.com website. You can subscribe there as well and get all our updates. All right, so the information is at the website, estateDocPrep.com. That's ESTATEDOCPREP, estateDocPrep.com. On Facebook, it's estateDocPrep.com, and it's not .com, right? That's just the State Doc Prep. I think.
Yeah, State Doc Prep. Yes.
Yeah, so we'll fix that. The next piece is LinkedIn is Estate Doc Prep. Instagram is Estate Doc Prep. And X is Estate Doc Prep with initial cap there. All the others were all lowercase. YouTube is at Estate Doc Prep. Again, initial cap for those Estate Doc and Prep. TikTok is Estate Doc Preparation. And Pinterest is Estate Doc Prep. So, Oscar, tell them, what is your call to action today? What can they find when they go to the website, or where's your most
I'm gonna give you guys. I'll give you guys three ways. The easiest way is to call. You can call our artificial intelligence for any questions. She always answers, and she's always on the phone. She's artificial intelligence, but she answers all your questions about estate planning, which is 805-909-4689. That would be the phone number that you can call and ask any questions. And if you want to get transferred to a live estate planning coordinator, you'd be more than welcome to be able to ask that. And then the second gift that we want to always give is estatedocprep.com/guide. That's a free guide. It's a comprehensive estate planning guide that we give out and say, listen, full disclosure, if you are able to fill that out, it does not mean you have an estate plan. Okay, so that means that you filled out the guide and you're ready for the estate plan. And the last gift that I'd like to give you, for the first 10 listeners, you can use leadership as a discount code, leadership, a discount code, and you'll save $1,000 off of the lifetime value. And that lifetime value, that means your checkout would be $14.95 for the rest, and you'll pay it once, and it'll be done for the rest of your life. And
Awesome.
that was worth it. Thank you so much, Vicki, for allowing me on here on this crusade. I hope I brought a ton of value to you guys. And those of you that are listening, yesterday will never come back. Tomorrow's not promised. Today is the best day to take action and protect your family and assets. Or as I would say, the things that are close and near and dear to your heart, your money and your family.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. The phone number one more time, please.
805-909-4689.
Okay, 805-909-4689. I hope you all do take Oscar's heed and think about, if you don't have a living trust, to take the steps to get one. If it's not through him, through someone else. But he's giving you a great deal, so be the first 10 to put in that word leadership, and make sure that you get the guide first, the state doc page. I'm sorry, estate doc prep/guide. Oscar, thank you so much for sharing such wonderful information. And, I love that you advise people to talk to someone who went through probate, because it will scare them into doing it.
Well, it'll give them a reality check of what can happen, right?
Yeah, so very true. As always, I remind my guests and my audience that life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling, signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.